Welcome to Magnificat TV news, dedicated to our free news from the Church. Today is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021. The Pope has ordered investigations of the actions of Cardinal Woelki and other bishops in the Diocese of Cologne and has sent 2 commissioners. Cardinal Müller has accused the bishops who control power in the Church in Germany of leading it into a path of heresy. Archbishop Aquila of Denver asked the German bishops to think carefully and not to turn away from the Catholic faith. A group of U.S. bishops asked the President of the U.S. Conference not to debate the issue of communion to abortion politicians. Almost the entire clergy of a Chinese diocese, including the bishop, has been arrested and is undergoing ideological re-education by the police. 2 pontifical commissioners will investigate the behavior of some bishops in the Diocese of Cologne in connection with cases of pedophilia.
The Archdiocese of Cologne announced Friday that Pope Francis has ordered an apostolic visitation to the Archdiocese and appointed Cardinal Arborelius, Bishop of Stockholm, and Monsignor van den Hende, Bishop of Rotterdam, and President of the Dutch Bishops' Conference as apostolic visitors.
During the first half of June, the apostolic visitors will obtain a complete picture of the complex pastoral situation in the Archdiocese, and at the same time of the possible mistakes made by Cardinal Woelki and the Archbishop of Hamburg, Archbishop Hesse, as well as by the auxiliary bishops in handling cases of sexual abuse.
Cardinal Woelki has stated that he had already informed the Pope comprehensively about the situation in February. I welcome the fact that the Pope wants to get his own picture of the situation by means of an independent investigation, and I accept the consequences of the apostolic visitation, he has stated.
On the other hand, the Holy Father has appointed Archbishop Arthur Roche, Archbishop Emeritus of Leeds, until now Secretary of the same congregation, as Prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship, who has held this position since he was appointed to this office by Benedict XVI.
The German Synod is not a legitimate body, and these who lead it are leading the Church into heresy, Cardinal Müller said, and called on the Pope to add.
Cardinal Müller has published the article Blessing and Blasphemy, in which he condemns the blessings of homosexual unions that have taken place in Germany, asks Rome not to remain silent, and expresses his fear that the faithful remnant in his native country will disintegrate.
What we are witnessing is the heretical denial of the Catholic faith in the sacrament of marriage and the denial of the anthropological truth that the difference between man and woman expresses God's will in creation, Müller said.
In so doing, it not only calls into question the primacy of the Petrine Magisterium, which is based on revelation, but also questions the authority of God's own revelation. What is new about this theology that returns to paganism is its impertinent insistence on calling itself Catholic, he adds.
The synodal way is not legitimized by the constitution of the Catholic Church, says Müller, who asks the Pope not to remain silent, otherwise the Church in Germany will disintegrate.
For the sake of the truth of the gospel and the unity of the Church, Rome must not watch silently, hoping that things will not go too badly, or that the Germans can be appeased with tactical finesses and small concessions. We need a clear statement of principles with practical consequences.
Finally, he recalls that primacy is given to the Church of Rome, not only because of the prerogatives of the chair of Peter, whose occupant could do as he wished, but rather because of the serious duty of the Pope assigned to him by Christ to watch over the unity of the universal church in the revealed faith.
The Archbishop of Denver has written a detailed letter on the situation in Germany and requested the bishops and the German faithful to don't reject the Catholic faith.
Archbishop Aquila has warned that the Synod's guiding text presents untenable views of the Catholic Church, downplays the Church as God's instrument of salvation, and ignores the tensions between the Church's mission and worldly attitudes.
Most of us outside Germany are aware through the media of the German synodal way and the bluntness of some bishops in calling for radical changes in the Church's teaching and practice, says the American prelate.
According to Aquila, despite the Synod Assembly's apparent emphasis on dialogue, it believes itself not only competent but obligated to make binding decisions for the Church that are based on a biased and tendentious account of the origin and nature of the priesthood.
Regarding the ordination of women, Aquila said the text implicitly questions the distinction between the priesthood of the baptized and the ministerial priesthood. The text's approach seems calculated to undermine the definitive and permanent character of the sacrament of holy orders.
According to the American bishop, it appears that the German Assembly hopes to create a church that, far from being prepared to suffer the scorn of the world for its fidelity to Christ, will be preeminently conditioned by the world and comfortably accepted by it as a respectable institution among others.
The question regarding the communion of pro-abortion politicians continues to debate the U.S. bishops. One group has asked not to debate the issue.
68 bishops out of a total of more than 400 have sent a letter to the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops asking that the issue of communion for pro-abortion Catholic politicians not be debated at the upcoming June plenary.
The letter was signed by 3 cardinals, those of Washington, Chicago, and Boston. It urges that the committee's work on Eucharistic coherence be halted and that the planned discussion on the subject be removed from the agenda of the June plenary meeting of the bishops.
Reaction to the letter has been swift. The Archbishop of San Francisco, Monsignor Cordileone, has been clear. I am deeply saddened by the growing public acrimony among the bishops and the adoption of closed-door maneuvers to interfere with the accepted, normal, and agreed-upon procedures.
Those who do not want to issue a document on Eucharistic consistency should be open to discussing the issue objectively and fairly with their brother bishops, rather than trying to derail the process, he said.
Bishop Sticca of Knoxville also intervened to say that it is imperative that the bishops of the United States have the ability to discuss the reception of the Eucharist by Catholic public officials. These officials, like President Biden, control life through the law.
The bishop and most of the priests of a Chinese diocese have been arrested and taken to a concentration camp in order to subjugate them to the Communist Party.
A few days ago, a large number of police broke into the factory that served as the seminary of the Xinjiang Apostolic Prefecture and arrested the students and professors. The next day, the bishop, Monsignor Zhang Weizhu, who had already been arrested on other occasions, was arrested.
The Apostolic Prefecture of Xinjiang is not recognized by the Chinese government. For this reason, all activities of priests, seminarians, and faithful are considered illegal and criminal.
After the arrest, and with the suspicion that some seminarians had managed to escape, the police went around the town, going house to house to find them. If they discovered signs related to the faith, such as crosses or images, they destroyed them and fined the owners.
Monsignor Joseph Zhang Weizhu, of 63 years old, was ordained bishop in 1992 and was imprisoned several times. The Apostolic Prefecture of Xinjiang has 100,000 faithful.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to commenting on what is happening in the church in Germany and in the United States.
The battle in Germany is not yet over, and the battle in the United States is already in full swing. This week, a cardinal and a bishop have openly confronted their German colleagues, telling them that what they're doing they have no right to do, and that it is clearly a heresy. Cardinal Müller, who is also German, said it is a heretical denial of church teaching. Archbishop Aquila, Archbishop of Denver, in a long, thoughtful letter to the bishops of Germany, also told them in a different manner not to try to subject the doctrine of the church to the demands of the world, and that besides they cannot do so. This in regard to the battle in Germany, but the battle in the United States has also begun. The bishops decided to bring to the plenary assembly the question of whether or not pro-abortion politicians, including President Biden, could whether receive communion or not. The Vatican intervened, the doctrine of the faith intervened, saying that if the issue had to be debated, it should not be a cause for division, and that in the last instance the right of each bishop in his diocese should be respected. Well, but now more than 60 bishops, there are more than 400 in the United States, more than 60 bishops have written a letter to the president of the Episcopal Conference, Bishop Gomez, asking that this topic be withdrawn from the plenary assembly. Immediately, other bishops have come out and said that it has to be debated as planned. Battle in Germany and battle in the United States. And everything revolves around the same thing. Everything revolves around the essential about the Eucharist. The question began, it is easy to remember because it was not so long ago, with the Amoris Laetitia. What was raised there as an exception, the possibility of an exceptional way that the divorced and civilly remarried could receive communion, seen case by case, the possibility of this happening in a very rare instances, well, it was expected that naturally this would be generalized. And in fact, it's happened in many places. Everyone who wants to receive communion receives communion. Well, then came, always about the same issue, the invitation of the president of the German bishops to the Protestants to receive communion if they wanted to receive communion. The Eucharist always. And now comes again the Eucharist if the abortionist politicians who are excommunicated, excommunion late sententia, automatic excommunion, if they can or cannot receive communion, always the Eucharist at the center. The devil knows well what he's doing. The Eucharist is the main reason for the devil's attack because it is the Lord. And the devil knows that if he destroys the Eucharist, he destroys the church. There are other issues, such as the blessing of homosexual couples, which I'm not saying are not important, but the real war that is being fought is around the Eucharist. The respect that the Lord deserves, the conditions that must be met to receive the Lord truly present in the Eucharist. Now, if we go deeper, we realize that there is what Archbishop Aquila, the Archbishop of Denver, said. That there is another issue, and in reality, the problem is in the adaptation of the Church to the world. An adaptation that is made or is intended to be made in the name of mercy. In the name of mercy, the divorced and civilly remarried must receive communion. As it was said at the time, poor mother, when her child's communion day comes and she can receive communion. The divorced and civilly remarried can receive communion without any problem. Not an exceptional case that must be seen with care, no. Anyone who wants can receive communion in the name of mercy. The Protestant, it is called Eucharistic hospitality, well, can receive communion in the name of mercy. Or the one who is favoring abortion, in the name of mercy. It is a concept not only wrong, but profoundly negative of mercy. It is as if we say that in the name of mercy, the thief can steal. The one who beats women can continue to beat them, or the terrorist can continue to put bombs. That is not mercy. Mercy can be had with people, and in addition when people are repentant. But mercy cannot be had with crime, it cannot be had with evil. I know that these are comparisons that perhaps are a little exaggerated, but to be understood, you cannot have mercy on sin. you have mercy on the sinner when the sinner asks for forgiveness. I repeat, it is a wrong concept of mercy which is being used. I believe that those who use it know well that they are wrong. It is being used to devalue the doctrine, to adapt the teaching of the Church to the world. Now, if this is done, if in the name of mercy those things of the gospel that are not interesting because they go against their objectives are removed, that adaptation of the teaching of the Church, of the Word of God to the world, if in the name of mercy that of the one who eats and drinks the body and blood of Christ without being prepared eats and drinks his own damnation is suppressed, for example, if 2,000 years of church history, of church tradition are suppressed, saying that those who defend it are rigid, that they are anchored in the letter and that they are not open to the Spirit, if that is suppressed, then others will decide that it can be suppressed, for example, that of I was hungry and you gave me to eat, or come blessed of my Father, or come cursed of my Father, or that one can suppress that of take and eat, this is my body, or that one can suppress that of what you have done to the least, you have done to me, or that one can suppress that of love your enemies, or that it is possible to suppress, for example, that of you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. And if that is suppressed, because it is considered to have simply a symbolic meaning or an honorary primacy, if that is suppressed, what remains as a point of reference? As unity in the church? And that is where the paradox occurs. Those who are on the side of the adaptation of the church to the world, as the Archbishop of Denver said, those who are on the side of the adaptation of the church to the world present themselves as friends of the Pope and act with impunity against the teachings of the church, even against the recent teachings of the church, the recent teachings of the Vatican with Pope Francis at the head. Acting with impunity, they are devaluing everything, starting with the Eucharist and continuing with the papacy. On the other hand, those who are accused of being enemies of the Pope, accused, I am not saying that they are, those who are accused of being enemies of the Pope are those who are defending the integral doctrine, the Eucharist, and the papacy as well. The friends of the Pope attack the papacy, and the alleged and accused enemies of the Pope defend the papacy. This is more than a civil war. This is already a schizophrenia. This is madness. And if a house in civil war collapses, as the Lord said, let alone a church that has entered into a real frenzy of madness and of nonsense, it cannot be that those who are defending the adaptation of the church to the world, of the teaching and doctrine to the world, can act with impunity, eroding even the Eucharist and the papacy. It cannot be. Because in the end, if that happens, I repeat, house after house will fall. If the Eucharist falls and the papacy falls, everything will fall. Let us humbly and persistently ask the Lord to please resolve this as soon as possible, and that so much suffering may end as soon as possible. See you next time, God willing.
If you like to keep up to date with what is happening in the church, you can visit us in www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.